Before we dive in, let me quickly welcome you to News Decoded, your trusted guide through the maze of today's headlines. If you appreciate fearless reporting that cuts through the noise, tap that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop your thoughts in the comments so the conversation keeps growing. Now settle in and let's journey together through one of the most unsettling chapters unfolding on the West Coast. California, a state often celebrated for its innovation and diversity, has been plunged into a surreal landscape that feels more like a militarized zone than a global economic powerhouse. Squadrons of agents in full tactical gear march across fertile fields that normally produce blueberries, lettuce, and legally cultivated cannabis. Dust swirls around armored vehicles while helicopters hover at treetop height, their rotor wash flattening crops and rattling greenhouses. Workers scatter in panic as non-lethal rounds crack through the air. Though anyone who has studied crowd control munitions knows non-lethal is a slippery label. Rubber bullets can shatter bones, beanbag rounds have killed before, and this time they already have. At least one farm laborer has lost his life in the confusion and terror. From Santa Barbara to Ventura, through Fresno's Central Valley heartland, and down into Riverside and Los Angeles counties, communities are watching what feels like an undeclared state of martial law. California's economy on its own rivals that of entire nations, fourth largest GDP globally, yet it is being treated as if it were hostile territory. Residents awaken each dawn to the possibility that their commute could intersect with a surprise roadblock, or that drones might sweep over familiar orchards searching for supposed immigration targets. Local sheriffs admit off-camera that they were given little advance notice and even less influence over the tactics now dominating their jurisdictions. One arrest in particular has become a flashpoint. George Reis, 25, is a disabled U.S. Army veteran whose vehicle proudly bears stickers recognizing his service. He took a civilian job as a licensed security guard for a legal cannabis producer. Yet video from a news chopper shows agents surrounding his white sedan, shattering a window, discharging pepper spray, and dragging him out. Hours turned into days, and his family's calls to detention centers went unanswered. His sister's voice trembled as she recounted the chaos. George had simply tried to back away from the commotion, hoping to avoid confrontation. Instead, he vanished into a bureaucratic black hole, one made deeper by a system that no longer seems concerned with probable cause. On television, a former federal official declared that his agency doesn't actually need probable cause, claiming broad powers based on totality of circumstances. He rattled off criteria like location, occupation, and physical appearance, a polite euphemism for racial profiling. Legal scholars recoiled. These agents, experts explained, are civil officers executing administrative warrants, not criminal investigators cloaked in Fourth Amendment authority. They cannot bypass constitutional safeguards simply by swapping badges for body armor. Yet that is exactly what the public is witnessing. Windows smashed, pepper spray deployed, citizens zip-tied and transported to undisclosed sites. Civil rights attorneys point out that America has a long and complicated history with detention, stretching from the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II to present-day immigration holding facilities. Court rulings have repeatedly affirmed that due process protections extend to every person on U.S. soil, citizen or not. Even prisoners convicted of violent crimes retain basic rights to humane treatment. When detainees report food crawling with maggots, suffocating heat without ventilation, and brutal disciplinary practices reminiscent of military prisons, we cross a moral Rubicon. Labeling these camps administrative does not dilute the cruelty. Behind the rhetoric lie ordinary human beings, parents who tuck children into bed each night, homeowners carrying mortgages, high school students navigating algebra and adolescence, elders who volunteer at church food drives. Some lack immigration documents, many do not. Yet armored personnel carriers now rattle down county roads in pursuit of them all, blurring the line between enforcing policy and waging intimidation. The message radiating outward is unmistakable. Anyone who looks Latino may be questioned, detained, or disappeared, documentation notwithstanding. Public opinion has begun to shift dramatically. Polls conducted only a few years ago showed a nation evenly divided over immigration. Today, nearly 8 in 10 Americans identify the United States as a country enriched by immigrants, while support for heavy-handed crackdowns has plunged to historic lows. Yet the raids accelerate, suggesting a widening rift between government action and collective conscience. Californians pride themselves on pioneering spirit, Silicon Valley startups, Hollywood storytelling, renewable energy revolutions. But that pride has curdled into disbelief as they watch farm workers sprint between rows of strawberries to escape tactical teams. Legal observers warn that the philosophical justification underpinning these operations, framing deportation as a mere administrative process, creates a loophole wide enough to drive an armored truck through. By insisting that removals are regulatory rather than punitive, agencies sidestep constitutional scrutiny, then pivot back to paramilitary theatrics when it suits them. It is the ultimate have-your-cake-and-eat-it strategy, one that leaves courts struggling to reconcile precedent with reality on the ground. None of this occurs in a vacuum. Historical parallels loom large. Throughout American history, fear has repeatedly overridden principle, from Red Scare raids to post-9/11 surveillance sweeps. Each chapter carries its own rationalizations, yet years later, consensus emerges that constitutional rights are not luxuries to be revoked when politically convenient. The present crisis in California may someday be taught alongside those cautionary tales, a reminder of how fragile freedoms become when policymakers treat due process as an inconvenience. Community organizers, faith leaders, and civil rights nonprofits now scramble to respond. They coordinate rapid response hotlines, distribute Know Your Rights pamphlets in multiple languages, and staff legal clinics near farms most frequently targeted. Volunteers deliver food, water, and mobile phone chargers to family members camped outside detention facilities hoping for updates. Lawyers file emergency writs of habeas corpus seeking basic information. Where is my client? Is he alive? Has she received medical care? Each filing tests the judiciary's appetite to confront executive overreach. Economists add another layer of urgency. California agriculture feeds the nation. 40% of all organic produce consumed in the United States originates there. If farmers cannot harvest because fields become quasi-battle zones, grocery prices will spike far beyond state lines. Likewise, California's tech sector relies on a global workforce. Stories of seasoned engineers being detained while waiting for coffee ripple through corporate Slack channels, fueling anxiety and, increasingly, vocal dissent from CEOs who seldom weigh in on politics. Even local law enforcement faces dilemmas. Sheriffs elected on promises of community trust now find themselves spectators to operations they neither sanctioned nor can fully monitor. Some quietly refuse to honor federal detainers lacking judicial warrants, citing liability concerns if a wrongfully held individual sues. Others cooperate but question the optics of staging nighttime helicopter insertions that terrify entire neighborhoods. Tension simmers at county-level briefings where federal commanders present slide decks heavy on tactical jargon yet light on probable cause thresholds. Meanwhile, ordinary Californians capture raid footage on smartphones. Live streams broadcast plumes of dust rising behind armored convoys, radio chatter crackling in the background, distant shouts in Spanish and English. These clips flood social media, galvanizing outrage far beyond state borders. Hashtags trend, pundits duel on cable networks, editorial boards urge congressional inquiry. But for families who still do not know where a loved one was taken, viral attention is cold comfort. Civil libertarians argue that the remedy begins with transparency. Publish operational guidelines, release body camera footage, disclose detention site rosters. Only sunlight can test claims that every action is justified, particularly when state constitutions spell out additional protections beyond the United States Bill of Rights. California courts historically resist blanket assertions of authority unmoored from probable cause. A flurry of lawsuits already challenges the legality of roadblocks, aerial surveillance, and property seizures executed without state warrants. Yet lawsuits move slowly, and raids happen fast. Farmhands exchange whispered tips about safe routes to fields. Parents rehearse what to say if agents appear at the school gates, and veterans groups demand accountability for the treatment of comrades like George Reis, who served the flag only to be tackled by those wearing it on their sleeves. The irony stings. A nation that venerates its troops just witnessed one dragged across asphalt under suspicion not of treason, but of having brown skin in the wrong zip code. Advocates also caution against focusing solely on citizens versus non-citizens distinctions. Human rights, they insist, are indivisible. When governmental power expands unchecked, it seldom confines itself to a single demographic. Today, farm workers. Tomorrow, perhaps journalists, activists, or anyone whose profile fits a hazy algorithm. The logic of overreach is relentless. Once accepted in one arena, it migrates elsewhere with frightening ease. Within California's immigrant neighborhoods, resilience blooms alongside fear. Street corner vendors form mutual aid networks. Community centers convert classrooms into legal aid hubs after hours. Pastors, rabbis, imams, and Buddhist monks share pulpits to denounce injustice in English, Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Mixtec. Children craft posters reading "We Belong Here" adorned with hand-drawn butterflies, a symbol of migration, transformation, and fragile beauty under assault. Opponents of the raids emphasize that immigration, far from draining resources, revitalizes stagnant communities, sustains social security with payroll taxes, and enriches cultural life. They highlight statistics showing that immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens. They underscore the folly of disrupting supply chains already strained by climate droughts and global market volatility. Above all, they remind America that its national mythos, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses," was never meant to be conditional. Observers see a broader political calculus at work. By painting California as defiant, federal strategists energize a base drawn to strong-arm displays. Yet the gamble may backfire. Footage of agents hurling pepper canisters at farmhands could become the defining image of an election cycle, eclipsing talking points about border security. Voters who tune out policy lectures often respond viscerally to perceived cruelty, especially when victims include veterans and children. In the midst of turmoil, pockets of hope persist. Universities offer emergency legal fellowships, tech startups donate drones for documenting possible abuses, farm cooperatives share safety protocols translated into indigenous languages. Each act stitches another thread into a tapestry of resistance, proving that solidarity can flourish even under rotor wash and searchlights. As dusk falls over vineyards and vegetable rows, families light candles in kitchen windows, a quiet gesture signaling care for those still missing. Somewhere beyond city limits, stadium-style floodlights blaze while agents sort detainees into transport vans. The gap between these two realities, the warmth of a candle, the glare of tactical beams, captures the moral crossroads confronting the nation. So where does it end? History teaches that overreach eventually collides with the courts, with public opinion, and with simple logistics. The cost of occupying farmland, the ripple effects on food supply, the legal settlements borne by taxpayers. Yet waiting for that collision exacts a steep toll in broken glass, broken families, and broken trust. Californians now waking at 3 a.m. to the sound of helicopters overhead will not soon forget the feeling, nor will the broader American public once grainy phone footage becomes part of our collective memory. And that is why conversations like this matter. Information is a catalyst. Awareness precedes reform. By sharing eyewitness accounts, explaining constitutional guardrails, and amplifying community voices, we narrow the gap between rhetoric and reality. Change rarely arrives quickly, but it accelerates when informed citizens refuse to look away. We've traveled a difficult path tonight, from blueberry rows under assault to courtrooms where constitutional principles are on trial. The stakes could hardly be higher, the soul of a state, and by extension, the character of a nation. Whether you are tuning in from a coastal city, a rural township, or somewhere far beyond American borders, remember that justice is not an abstract concept. It lives or dies in the details of each traffic stop, each detention cell, each courtroom plea. Thank you for lending your time and open mind. If this report resonated, stand with us at NewsDecoded, hit subscribe so you never miss a deep dive, tap like to boost the algorithmic signal, and share your perspective in the comments. Your engagement fuels independent journalism committed to holding power accountable. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and above all, stay resolved.